VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Welcome to Crosstalk here on the VCY America Network. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this past Friday, the Obama administration released some revised rules pertaining to the Health and Human Services Mandate pertaining to contraceptives, abortifacients, and sterilizations. So what is the revision? Is it acceptable? And what is the response from the pro-family, pro-life community? Well, here to discuss the matter with us is Dr. David Stevens, the Chief Executive Officer of the Christian Medical and Dental Association. They are the nation's largest faith-based organization of doctors. He's spokesman for 16,000 doctors. David Stevens, welcome back here to Crosstalk.
Great to be with you, Jim.
Before we talk about some of the revisions that came out last Friday by HHS, Health and Human Services, let's talk about this mandate, first of all, that has brought outrage from the pro-life community, pro-family community, religious-based community. What exactly is this mandate? We keep hearing mandate. What is it that's spurring all these lawsuits across the country?
Well, Obamacare included in the fact that it was going to fund preventative services. So Health and Human Services then issued regulations, rules, which state that for preventative care, every health insurance company in the country must give contraceptive coverage in it, and every employer must pay for it. And unfortunately, that includes every Federal Drug Administration approved contraceptive. Well, obviously, right away you see a problem for the Catholic Church, for example, who doesn't think contraceptives are something people should take. Now they're having to pay for them for their employees. There's Protestants who also don't believe in using contraceptives or sterilization. But then included in the term contraceptives are two morning after pills. Ella 1 is one of the names of one of them, which works just like the abortion pill, RU486, and it says on its packaging, yes, it can actually interrupt a developing pregnancy. So right away, all of a sudden, here at the Christian Medical and Dental Association, someone's telling me I have to pay for my staff, if they wanted to use it, an abortifacient, a known abortifacient, which is highly problematic and violates our religious right of conscience to say, no, I don't want to participate in this.
So you mentioned there were two. Ella 1 was one?
Yeah, and Plan B is the other.
Okay.
And that one works only for 3 days. Ella 1 works for 5 days. Both of them, Ella 1 in particular, but Plan B, there's also evidence showing that it prevents implantation of the developing human embryo inside the womb. In other words, fertilization takes place. The new human being is coming down the fallopian tubes into the womb and cannot implant because Plan B has caused the inlining of the uterus to be hostile to implantation, and the baby that's developing dies.
So conception has taken place in that case.
Right. A new human being, someone just like you and me, and we're in the first days of our development, is developing, and all of a sudden it has no home and passes on out of the mother and dies.
Well, all of a sudden, as everybody's preparing for the weekend, all of a sudden an announcement last week from Health and Human Services about some revisions to this mandate. What are those revisions?
Well, one of the big issues in the original ones was that they defined what a religious organization was. And for them, that was a church who, implemented teaching people about its beliefs, that also had the majority of its people sharing its beliefs. These restrictions essentially, kept the religious exemption only to churches and no one else. This was a huge issue, as you can imagine, and there was such a huge outcry, 44 court cases on this issue, that the administration decided, okay, we're going to have another go at this and redo the rules. Well, they didn't do much better.
Well, immediately everything became a buzz. I mean, we were getting news releases from a number of pro-family organizations, and I mean, this was almost immediately after this press release came out from HHS, but one of the press releases came out from your organization, the Christian Medical and Dental Association, and you called the new HHS mandate as being unacceptable. Tell us why.
Well, it's unacceptable because the government now thinks that they can just step aside from the First Amendment of the Constitution, which says that we have freedom of religion and the ability to act upon our religious beliefs, our right of conscience. In other words, to say, because of my religious beliefs, I'm not going to go kill somebody in the Army, and you get an exemption from a combat role. Those are things that have been enshrined in our Constitution and practiced by our government for years. But unfortunately, this administration has decided they decide who's religious enough to have the First Amendment applied to them. We highly oppose that, even though they've broadened the group in the sense of saying, well, it can now be a church or its auxiliaries can have a right of conscience. They do not protect family-owned businesses like Hobby Lobby, other groups that are owned by families, or family-owned, and say, listen, we do not want to provide abortifacients to our employees. It doesn't give a personal exemption. You can't say, well, I don't want to pay with my own personal money for an insurance policy that covers these things. You don't have that power any longer. And so all of this is just a restricting of religious liberty. Unfortunately, what's happening with this administration, Jim, is that they're going away from the idea of freedom of religion to the concept of freedom of worship.
And this is really critical, Dr. Stevens, because there is a vast difference between those two concepts. What the Constitution says, freedom of religion, and the term that we keep hearing from the Obama administration, freedom of worship. Tell us, what is the key difference between those?
Well, freedom of worship means you can go and be in the synagogue, the mosque, your church, whatever you want to do, and what you do inside those quarters, that's up to you.
Yeah, within these walls.
Yeah, within these walls. As soon as you walk outside, you have to obey every law everyone else does. There's no exemption for religious liberty, no right of conscience. You're in the public square, and you have the freedom to worship how you want, but it has no application to how you live your life.
Folks, I want you to have your ears perk up, because increasingly you are hearing President Obama use that phrase more, freedom of worship rather than freedom of religion. And certainly, again, within the dictates of the four walls of your church building is one thing, but as soon as you come out into the public square, folks, you know as well as I know, our Christian values and beliefs don't stay within the confines of the walls of the church. They're part of our lives. Now, Dr. Stevens, the Constitution itself, I mean, its freedom of religion goes beyond that of just certain groups, doesn't it?
It's something applicable to everyone. In fact, the original wording of the First Amendment by James Madison went as far as to actually say these words. It said, the civil rights of none shall be abridged on account of religious belief or worship, nor shall any national religion be established, nor shall the full and equal rights of conscience be in any manner, nor on any pretext infringed. Not on the pretext that all women need contraceptives, that this is a women's rights issue, all the things that have been brought forth in this mandate. It said very clearly that's not the case. Now, when the House and the Senate looked at this, you can go back and look at the congressional record, and they went back and forth and finally came up with the wording that we have now, saying that it was even more comprehensive. The free exercise of religion meant everything and every aspect of life, and it was very clear in what they said, what they meant. Unfortunately, that's being ignored.
Well, whatever happened to this executive order that had been promised that caused people like Bart Stupak to surrender to the Obama administration, in that there would not be abortion that would be mandated through Obamacare?
Well, nobody's talking about it in the administration right now. I haven't heard those words said since this thing was passed. In fact, under Obamacare and the exchange program, you actually can be required to have a deduction from your paycheck that specifically goes to an abortion fund that's going to pay for abortions, at least $1 each pay period. Now, we figured that out. That alone is enough to pay for 2 million abortions a year. Right now we have 1.2 million. So, and you're not told when you go to the exchange whether the insurance policy that you've picked actually includes this or not. In fact, they're forbidden to tell you. The first thing you're going to know is see this little deduction on your check each month and say, what is that for? And find out you're actually funding abortion personally. So the things that were promised have not not been what's delivered.
Dr. Stevens, is it true that this so-called exemption now that was given this past Friday with these proposed new rules that employees would still have coverage for these things, just not paid for by the employer?
Yeah, this is called verbal engineering. You take and wrap some words around it to try to make it acceptable, but it's the same thing. What they're saying, Jim, is this. They're saying, no, if you're a nonprofit religious organization, you don't have to pay for this. We're just going to tell the insurance company they must provide it to you free. Well, now that's ridiculous. If I didn't buy insurance, nobody's going to get it free. So this is just semantics. These are just words. And they say, well, the insurance company's not going to come out any worse because if the woman got pregnant, instead of use these contraceptives, they're going to have those costs. You go back and look to quote the proof on that, and this is the government's own experts that are part of the administration that are saying this. So these people would not get this abortifacient unless I had an insurance policy that covered my workers. I'm really paying for it. They can say it's free, but that insurance company doesn't give anything away free. We all know that. We know that this money is coming out of the money that we're paying for our insurance premiums, and just saying it's going to be free is ridiculous.
We're talking with Dr. David Stevens. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Christian Medical and Dental Association. Dr. Stevens, there is such a web that it goes throughout Obamacare into so many different agencies, but another one of those is the IRS. And I'm wondering if there's a connection between this announcement that came out Friday saying, okay, these companies are not going to have to fund it. It's going to be funded by the insurance companies. But last Wednesday, the IRS came out and assumed that under Obamacare, the cheapest plan for a family will cost $20,000 per year, pointing that this is the lowest tiered health insurance plan, known as the bronze plan, 2.5% of taxable income. By the year 2016, it's $2,085 per family. But Dr. Stevens, I believe that in itself is outrageous. We're told that the cost of insurance was going to go down, but I started thinking, well, if all of a sudden these companies are having to provide these free services, when you talk about $20,000 a year, it doesn't make them so much free any longer, does it?
No, actually, the present average cost for family insurance is $16,000 a year. That's why corporations and businesses say they're most concerned about the cost of health care than anything they deal with. That's also why they're scrambling, trying to get out from under the Obamacare mandate. If you have less than 50 employees, you don't have to do this. So you know what companies are doing? Just articles I've read in the last week. There was a thing recommending that you take departments in your small business and have them incorporate separately and contract with them so you could stay under the numbers. So take your communications department, say it's really a separate organization by incorporating it, have a contract with them, and then you will not have to buy Obamacare. Interestingly enough, Jim, you know who's up in arms about this now? The unions. One of the biggest supporters of Obamacare, all of a sudden are realizing what this is going to cost them, and they're asking for an exemption. And don't make us have to do this because it's going to cost us so much money. When they actually passed this thing, it was estimated to cost a little less than $1 trillion over 10 years. Already, they have upgraded that cost to $1.68 trillion, 60-70% increase since this was passed.
We're talking with Dr. David Stevens, folks, and what we're talking about is a new HHS mandate on health care. And frankly, folks, it's unacceptable. We're going to be coming back with some more information after the break, as well as how you can let your voice be heard on this matter. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, creation author and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, why is evolution so controversial?
Chris, controversies rage in evolution, philosophical, theological, and political. Here at the Institute for Creation Research, we spend much of our time talking about the scientific controversies regarding evolution, in particular, the lack of any scientific evidence supporting it. Whether in the fossils or the living world, there's no mechanism that would accomplish it. In short, it's quite controversial. Unfortunately, the educational establishment insists that evolution be taught without regards to the controversies. Evidence against evolution is censored out of our classrooms, and thus our students are poorly prepared in science. I think this is because so many evolutionists hold it as a religious persuasion and are insecure if other religious views are presented. like the back to Genesis view of creation.
For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk here on VCY America, and folks, a lot of people across this nation kind of laughed when Nancy Pelosi said, well, we need to pass Obamacare, the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, so we know what's in it. Folks, she was serious when she said that. She was serious because there are constant rules that are being drafted, proposed, written, the comments taken on, and the new rules that are drafted, and the volumes that have been written, the new rules that have been written for Obamacare far exceed the confines of the bill itself. And yet all these rules have the weight of law. We're talking with Dr. David Stevens about some new mandate that came out this past Friday. And in a short time, we'll give you a point of contact where you can let your views be heard on this. But Dr. Stevens, Nancy Pelosi was right. We need to find out what's in it. And the longer time goes on, the more frightening this monstrosity becomes.
One of the most dangerous things about Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, when it passed, is it gave enormous power to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Unprecedented to do this, to do that, to do this. And one of them was to decide what preventative services would be covered under this policy. And, of course, they're making that include anything they want to include, and this contraceptive mandate is one of them. Interestingly, you mentioned regulations. There's now over 13,000 pages of regulation, and they're still writing them, just trying to tell you what's going to happen under this Obamacare as it's fully implemented. I suspect there'll be over 20,000 pages. I mean, who can even begin to comprehend what all there is there that we have to deal with?
Do you believe that the Obama administration is just trying with this new mandate they're ruling this past Friday just to stop a number of lawsuits? Because there have been a lot of lawsuits from organizations to stop this mandate. Is this just to put a stop to those things?
Absolutely. In fact, what they had said in a number of court cases, one of them involving Wheaton College, who brought suit over this issue, and when they got to court, the court said, no, this isn't really ripe yet. In other words, we're not going to give you a ruling because the government has promised to revise the regulations. And so no ruling was made. They were just put off. Of the cases that have actually had rulings on them, the government's lost 10 and won 4. So this is going to end up in the Supreme Court at some point, and I think the administration understood much of a leg to stand on the constitutionality of this, and now they're trying to backpedal to see how they can better defend this in court because they really don't want to unravel with a constitutional challenge in the Supreme Court.
Does this take the wind out of the sails of the suit that's with Matt Stever now at Liberty Counsel representing Liberty University?
I don't think so. In fact, this is not very clear about what's happening with these universities, Christian universities and groups, and how they're going to deal with it. It deals with the issue of self-insured plans. In other words, we actually don't have an insurance company. We have an administrator, and we insure ourselves. Some organizations do that. And what this one says is, well, your administrator is going to have to pay for it, the person that administrates your fund, but so it won't come out of his pocket. We're going to give them a refund on the taxes that they're going to get on the insurance now that we have Obamacare. I mean, this thing is so convoluted in how they're approaching this, but the bottom line is if you have a self-insured plan, you're still going to have a program that pays for abortifacients for your employees.
Well, pro-life groups are complaining that the new revisions don't go far enough in protecting the conscience rights of pro-life companies and organizations, business owners. At that same time, I'm also seeing from news reports Planned Parenthood is happy. They say that these revised accommodations to the Obamacare mandate, quote, will ensure that women can access no copay birth control as part of basic health care. And then we have NARAL, National Abortion Rights Action League, also happy regarding this announcement Friday. But Dr. Stevens, I've learned when Planned Parenthood is happy, when NARAL is applauding something, I'm totally against it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can you imagine, Jim, having a business and people would come in and get whatever they wanted and they didn't have to pay for it? somebody else would pay for it. That's exactly what's happening with Planned Parenthood and NAREL on their contraceptive business. All of a sudden, nobody has to pay anything. No copay, no deduction. The government is mandating that everybody that walks into one of their Planned Parenthood clinics and asks for contraception, sterilization, or whatever, that it's going to be totally paid for. Well, that's a great business plan, isn't it? Because, wow, you don't have to ask the people for money. Somebody else is going to put the money in your pocket, and the government's going to make them do it. That's why they're so happy about this.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Stevens. Why are you concerned? I mean, it appears that with what was said on Friday, that your organization is going to have an exemption. You're a Christian organization. Why is it that you're being so outspoken regarding this so-called exemption?
Because I'm still going to be providing an insurance plan for my employees that covers abortifacients, something that I am morally and religiously opposed to, that's against the Hippocratic Oath, which I took as a physician. It violates what I believe. And how can I live with this, saying, well, the government's paying for it, it's free or whatever? Bottom line is, I'm having to buy an insurance program that's going to cover these abortifacients. It violates my most deeply held beliefs. And if we let them cross this line, what other lines are they going to cross on religious freedom? This is something that's enshrined in our Constitution, so important that our founding fathers put it first, said that's the reason they put it first in the Bill of Rights, because they had been under religious oppression. They had had the effect of this in their own lives. They had fought, and many of them had loved ones that died for this freedom. And all of a sudden now we're going to write it off with just a group of regulations under a law that I believe is unconstitutional in giving the power to do this.
And what does this do for a company that is owned by a Christian businessman who like Hobby Lobby, says, you know what, this doesn't measure up to my biblical beliefs, my religious convictions?
Well, and so essentially, do you shut down your business? What do you do? Do you try to get out from under Obamacare so this doesn't apply to you? I mean, it's just, it creates a huge moral dilemma that we shouldn't have to be dealing with. And that's why, as pro-life groups, this came out within minutes, or buzz with stuff about this. And the one thing that came through loud and clear from the beginning, we're going to stick together on this. Even before we knew what it was, if the exemption exempts me, but others are not being exempted, we are going to stand together. Divided we fall, together we stand, and we need to fight for religious rights, not just the religious rights of my organization or me individually. This is worth standing up for, and we're not going to surrender. We're not going to be divided on this issue.
So how can people stand up?
Well, right now there's a comment period on these regulations at Health and Human Services. And so last time around, they got over 200,000 comments. And they categorized them and actually talked about them when they put out this new set of rules. They have to, by law, read what you said. They can't just ignore it. And so I'd encourage people to go to the Health and Human Services website at hhs.gov, and there you'll see a connection to where you can find the rules and leave your comment online. Take a few moments to do it. And any of the pro-life organizations, conservative organizations are speaking out on this. There's plenty of places where you can get your ammunition, remember key points, and make your case.
Okay, Dr. Stevens, you're online right now. You're on the HHS website. You have an opportunity to type in your comments in a brief form. What is it you're saying to the HHS?
What I'm saying is that these regulations still violate religious freedom in this country. They violate our right of conscience. The government has no right to decide who gets religious liberty and who doesn't. The Constitution says all of us have it, and therefore we should not be mandating contraceptive coverage for every insurance policy in the United States.
Folks, to have your comments heard on this issue, I should say have them read, and they do seek written comments. You go to hhs.gov. hhs.gov. And when you go to that page, you're going to see an opportunity there to see the word regulations. Regulations is at the upper right of the page. There's a bar that goes across the top, and you click on the word regulations. As you go to regulations, they find and comment on rules, and you'll see that's very easy to find. And you click on the part that says all HHS rules open for comment. It lays out everything that's open for comment at this time. And I believe right now it is 1, 2, 3, the fourth one down. It says Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. That's what you folks know as Obamacare. Exchange functions, eligibility for exemptions, miscellaneous minimum essential coverage provisions. And when you click on that, you'll be able to then give your comment on that. There's a few other ones that are on there as well, dealing with the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act. And you can click on those and let your comments be heard. So you go to hhs.gov, click on regulations, then all HHS rules open for comment, and very handily you'll find the proper rule there that you can comment. And any idea what the time frame is, Doctor?
Well, as best I understand, it's towards the end of March. I don't have the exact date with me, but they give you 60 days to comment, so it should be right at the end of March, beginning of April.
And, folks, you can comment on the rules there, on the docket number. Everything is right there. It's too voluminous for us to go through at this point. But if you follow the tools that we mentioned, you'll be able to get through to the site. Again, that's hhs.gov. Click on regulations, then click on all HHS rules open for comment, and then you'll find the ones pertaining to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act for your comments to be heard in that regard. Dr. Stevens, any other key places people can call or contact?
Yeah, if you actually go, you can go directly to this website, www.regulations.gov.
Okay.
Regulations.gov, and submit your comment. You can also do it by regular mail. You have to get the address is quite complex, and you have to get it off the website. But the easiest way is to do it electronically on the website, regulations.gov. I'm sure it's a big website, knowing how many regulations we have.
And Dr. Stevens, I know you've got a point of contact. You write regularly on this issue, on articles on your website. Tell us about your site as well.
Yeah, go to cmda.org. That's Christian Medical and Dental Association, cmda.org. And we have a lot of information there, as well as talking points, writing points, ways you can express yourself. There also, if you go to the Freedom to Care, freedom2care.org. They have ability to directly contact your congressman, your senator, the president on this and other issues having to do with right of conscience. So freedom2care.org or cmda.org. Both of those will get you the information you need.
Now, Senator Orrin Hatch said this decision violates the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely, because it says that the government may only restrict freedom when it's in the least way possible and when there's no other way to do something. And they've got very strict rules in this act. In fact, those on the other side of this issue are trying to get that repealed because it restricts them so clearly. And it does. It violates it. There's other ways to get contraceptives to women. In fact, the president himself made the offhand comment when he was interviewed about this. Well, 99% of women in the United States use contraceptives sometimes during their life. Wow. Well, if they do, then what's the big need for this? Why do we have to make this a mandate from the government?
Folks, we're going to take a quick break with Dr. David Stevens with us from the Christian Medical and Dental Association. What's your reaction to these new rules, the new mandates on health care? Are they acceptable to you? Our telephone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. 800-733-9829. Get on board with your questions and comments. We'll be back in 1 minute.
From Dave Cristiano Films come 2 DVDs which emphasize a high standard of purity. Pamela's Prayer tells the story of Pamela Buckland. All of her friends were dating, but Pamela was not. It seemed unfair that her father insisted on a high standard of purity. That is, it seemed unfair until the day she was married. Due to response to Pamela's Prayer, the second DVD, One Lucky Lady, was made. It's a touching drama that presents a perspective on purity before marriage that is insightful and heartfelt. Through the end of February, VCY America is making available this Purity Pack of DVDs. Any 2 copies are available for a donation of $15. Or if you want multiples to share with others, any 4 copies are available for a donation of $20. Or a combination of 12 DVDs is available for a donation of $42 to VCY America. To obtain your copies, call 1-800-729-9829 and specify how many of each DVD you wish to order. That's 1-800-729-9829.
Well, the HHS Mandate on health care came out last Friday. It's open for public comment right now. Folks, what do you have to say about it? We've given you a couple means. We will repeat those websites here momentarily. But during the break, Dr. Stevens, you found out some interesting information as far as the deadline for the public to comment.
Yeah, deadline is actually April the 8th. So we've got almost a complete 60 days here. And no matter how short the comment or how much time you put into it, it's worth going and letting your voice be heard. Numbers count as well as the content.
Again, folks, you can go to the site regulations.gov. Regulations.gov. There is a plethora, hundreds of new regulations that have come out just within the past many days. You can also go to hhs.gov, click on regulations, then click on all HHS rules open for comment. This kind of narrows the field down because regulations.gov gives you the whole plethora of regulations that have been posted. But hhs.gov, click on regulations, then click on all HHS rules open for comment. You'll find this one just a few down on the page and be able to get your comments there. Our lines are packed here, so we're going to go right to your phone calls. Dr. David Stevens is our guest today from the Christian Medical and Dental Association. And let's begin in the state of Florida. Steve, thanks for calling. You're on the air.
Yes, I'd just like to thank y'all for standing in a day when it seems like there's not too many folks doing that. I would like to say it seems like our religious freedoms are being attacked on every hand by this president. I couldn't believe that he wanted to push to have homosexual leaders within the Boy Scout organization. I'm completely shocked and appalled at that, and let alone with this, trying to make us in on abortions. And it seems like we need it. We need this. We need a place to stand up for what's right within our country, and that's what concerns me a lot, being able to take a stand. And I don't know why I would like to see an Elijah or somewhere, some of our preachers or something, if we got to march on Washington, do something. I mean, we need to know how to stand and fight this. If we stand back and do nothing, they're already showing what their intent's to do. And so as far as the Christians, we need to make a stand, and I thank you for your comment on that.
Thank you, Steve. Dr. Stevens.
Yeah, interestingly enough, they just had the parliament in France, very liberal country, propose legalization of homosexual marriage. They had thousands of people in the street protesting this, and they were led actually by homosexual leaders, and they said this isn't about homosexual rights, this is about children's rights, interestingly enough. And I thought to myself, I haven't seen a march on Washington on that issue.
Wow.
Maybe we should, and if France is doing something like that. And on this issue, I mean, we may get to the place of civil disobedience, and I hate to say that, but when all else has been exhausted, either we fight for our religious freedom or we over. Now, the penalties for not putting contraceptives in your insurance plan on my little organization with less than 50 people would be over $3 million a year in penalties if I don't cover contraceptives in our insurance plan. You can imagine what it'd be for larger organizations. These aren't penalties. This is punitive. We're going to destroy you if you don't do what we say. But all the same, we need to stand up no matter what the penalty and refuse to be coerced to do what we know is wrong.
Folks, you can make your written comments known. You can also call the White House. I mean, let your comments be known. I mean, think creatively. Who can I contact? Contact your senator. Contact your state, your representative, your congressman in this regard. The White House, 202 456-1111. Your House and Senate leaders there at 202-224-3121 and 225-3121. But make the written comments so they go through the proper channels there. But also those, people like the president think, oh, boy, we've done a great service now to the country by putting in the special exemption, and we've listened to the people, and now we've done this. Folks, we've got some problems here because this proposal does nothing. It does nothing to protect Christian for-profit business owners across the nation. Our telephone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829, next to Fort Scott, Kansas. Tom, you're on the air.
Yes, how are you guys today?
Well, we're troubled by this, but your comments today.
Yes, sir. You know, the Constitution basically states that the government's not to force us to buy anything, for one. And for two, Sebelius, I don't believe, will be there if our governor of Kansas wouldn't have voted to get her out of Kansas so he can have her job. I just think it's really wrong for him to do something like that when he knew what kind of an individual she was.
Well, again, this was a pick by Mr. Obama for his cabinet.
I know.
Your Governor Brownback didn't pick her for this position. This was part of his agenda anyways, regardless of who was in there.
Yeah, but she's one of the biggest abortion supporters in this country, Sebelius.
Yeah.
Well, she definitely is. She even supports Tom, partial birth abortion, third-term abortions, all sorts of things. She's on the most radical end against what the vast majority of people think in the United States on the abortion issue. The vast majority are saying, they may say an exemption on rape, incest, life of the mother, that type of thing. And, of course, rape and incest, that's punishing the child for something they didn't do by killing them. But anyway, she's on the way radical end of this, unfortunately. And there's an agenda here that they're paying back a lot of political supporters as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Pretty sad.
It certainly is. Appreciate your call here today. To Ixonia, Wisconsin, and Anna, thank you for calling us. You're on the air.
Hi, and God bless. First of all, we have to remember that we have an administration who does not respect our Constitution. We have to remember that. And the second thing I wanted to say is it's very easy to get into the regulations.gov website. It's, it started HHS.gov, and then under regulations, definitely all rules open for comment.
Right.
And it's 3 clicks. It's 3 clicks and you're there.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraging everybody, yes, call, write. Don't be frustrated. This is what we can do. Sometimes we sit and get frustrated and get angry and just let it go and say, oh, Lord, do what you need to do. No, it's up to us, his people, to let our government, we are their employers, know that, no, we are not going to stand. And remember how many other Christian organizations out there who are taking a stand. We have to get going.
Anna, thanks for the call.
Praise the Lord.
Appreciate it so much. And I appreciate that, Dr. Stevens, somebody who says, we can't sit back. We have to do something here.
Well, the Bible teaches us we're the hands, the voice, the feet of God on this planet, and we are supposed to act righteously and speak righteousness into the culture. We can do that with the spirit of love and caring, but this is bad news for everyone of any faith in this country. And the only thing that each individual can do is stand personally, and together we can make a difference.
What about the importance of prayer at a time like this as well?
It's definitely something we need to pray about because God's bigger than all of this. And if we think we can do it in our own power, God reminds us again and again in His Word, it's not by might nor by power, but by His Spirit. And therefore, we need to ask Him for wisdom. We need to ask Him for courage. We need to ask Him that He will give us direction. And then we need to speak boldly in love, just as He did, into His culture.
Let's go next to Trish, who's calling from Ohio. Trish, you're on the air.
Thank you. Dr. Stevens, I'd like to make a comment on why now, why this, why now, in regard to Obama saying, 99% of women in America have used abortion or have used contraceptives anyway. Why this, why now? And I think that this is one of the first steps, probably not the first step, but one of the first steps toward something more insidious that will lead us to forced abortions and possibly forced sterilizations that the public is funding. And I'd like your comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's been attempts, and even in Obamacare, there were, I think, over 20 different attempts to put, we will not fund abortion into that legislation, and it never happened. So there's definitely agenda there, and this continues to move down the road. Interesting thing, I just read an article over the weekend, and great concern that kind of impacts on this. We have this great need, quote, for contraceptives. Unfortunately, the population growth rate in the USA is 1.7% now. And to replace our population and not go in a downward spiral like Japan has, with not enough people coming up to pay for Obamacare, pay for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, whatever, you have to have at least 2.1% population growth rate to stay neutral. The number of babies born, I should say, per family is 2.1 on average to not go into a negative population. So are we really needing to increase the amount of contraception in the country? Because this has tremendous impact on our economy, our workforce, and the future of our country by doing this and making it so simple that it's expected of every woman that ultimately it's going to cause the demise of our culture and our country.
Dr. Stevens, we understand this is also going to impact families. Also coming out from the IRS last week said that parents must pay a federal fine under Obamacare if their children or dependent spouses are uninsured for any part of the year. Do you have any information on that?
I don't actually have the numbers, but those things are included. Even though all this money is going into Obamacare, though, there's still going to be 20 million people uninsured in this country, despite all the money we're spending. Unfortunately, the biggest issue in health care reform, and we need reform, but the biggest issue is cost. And we are now approaching 20% of every dollar, made in the United States is going towards health care. It's going to be 25% in the next 10 years, and then going up to 50% by 2050. So it's unsustainable. We've got to control cost. Unfortunately, what we've done with Obamacare is increase cost. And it's made it more expensive, more bureaucratic, and not dealt with the issue of malpractice, reasonable malpractice insurance, and all the other things that have to do with the cost of health care. I'm very concerned about the future of health care in this country, and this contraceptive mandate's just another sample of it.
And again, folks, when we say contraceptive mandate, understand what that means. That also means abortifacients, things like LO1, things like Plan B, that actually keep that conceived little one from being implanted in the womb, and actually brings about an abortion, takes the life of that fertilized egg. And folks, you have to understand what we're talking about here. This contraception includes those abortifacients. To Kathy in Whitewater, you're on the air.
Oh, hello, Dr. Stevens. I'm concerned. I'm very pro-life, and I'm 58, and it's occurred to me that in order to not have to support the abortion lifestyle that the administration is promoting with us, that I may have to actually do without health insurance and just pay a penalty. And I'm wondering if you could address that. Thank you.
Well, it's obviously a very dangerous thing to go without health insurance with the cost. I've been dealing with that in my own family just today. My wife has rheumatoid arthritis and has gone on a series of medicine, now on a medicine that costs $24,000 a year. And how does someone afford that? Unfortunately, insurance is needed, and I wouldn't advise anyone to go off of insurance. But I think what's going to happen with Obamacare, interestingly enough, is that the penalties, especially for young people, are so low that many of them are going to opt not to get it and just pay the penalty, which ultimately is going to bankrupt the system because they just buy a policy when they need it.
Wow. Dr. David Stevens with us. We're going to take our final break here and come back with more of your phone calls. And if you missed the point of action, we'll be providing that as well. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brennan House. Our website is worldviewweekend.com. Recently, megachurch pastor and seeker-sensitive pastor Perry Noble blogged on his website the following, quote, "I know so many people who really don't have a problem with Jesus, but they have a major problem with the church. And so because of that, They simply refuse to receive the product, Jesus, because of who or what is associated with him. My friends, this is the problem with the seeker-sensitive church movement. Jesus is not a product that we're trying to sell to the world. And many people that have a problem with the church, the problem is that they don't like the biblical gospel that's being preached. They want the watered-down milquetoast of the seeker-sensitive church. In fact, my friends, Jesus is not a product that should be marketed with man-centered marketing. That is a false gospel and a false Jesus. We need to preach the biblical gospel.
The new HHS mandate on health care came out Friday. Our guest here today, Dr. David Stevens from the Christian Medical and Dental Association, says unacceptable. We're taking your comments here today on Crosstalk. Dr. Stevens, just before the break, you had made a comment here about young people not getting insurance or something until they need it. What was that all about?
Well, the way Obamacare is set up is that they're trying to make sure that young people have to buy insurance. Most of them don't, and that's what's going to help fund the system. But unfortunately, the penalty is so low, they're not going to do it. Let me give you an example. An insurance policy for a young person 25 years of age costs $2,500 to $5,000. But if they say, no, I'm not going to get insurance, they have to pay, let's say they're making $40,000. They have to make 1% penalty, which is $400. So which would you do? Under the new scheme, insurance company has to give them insurance whether they're sick or not. So, well, I'll just wait till I get sick, and then I'll go buy the policy and pay the $400 versus the $2,500. You can see how the system is structured, and ultimately the financing is not going to work under that system.
Okay, folks, coming your way. Another new regulation coming to your doorstep. Mason in Mauston, Wisconsin, you're on the air.
Yes, God bless. And, my point is does anybody not believe what's happening? We got the same president. We had an election. We got the same president. We got the same Congress. They both fight each other. The other thing is that's so not so hard to believe is why don't we buy one of these major networks, ABC, NBC, or CBS, and put this out there? Because these are such liberal networks. Why don't we're supposed to be the party that has money?
Well, I don't know, Mason, if you've got the money to put up for it.
No,
but
we've
got the money
where you have the money. But what I'm saying is with the power of God and some organization, why can't we get people? I would donate money hand over fist to get a major ABC, NBC, or CBS.
Well, let me say this, Mason. It starts right where we're at. Certainly we're getting the information out there, and Christian Medical Association is doing that. Many pro-family groups, Concerned Women for America, Family Research Council, numerous groups, too many to mention at this point, are getting the information out there. And now, rather than lament that there's not a major network, the question is, what will you do with the information? If you will take that information, share it with 10 other people who in turn, that they can share it with 10 other people too. It's out there on the internet. It's out there through programs like Crosstalk and the Christian Medical Association getting the word out. And Doctor, I believe it's everybody taking what means is around them to use their circle of influence to get the word out.
Yeah, each of us have a sling and one small stone, and we need to use it. And we need to be involved in what's going on, not just concerned, not just upset, just not lamenting what's happening, but being a voice, supporting organizations that do represent our views, helping get the word out, and praying and doing our part. And then not worrying, we leave the results to God. He promised there'd be many troubles in this world. We're seeing them. He's still in control. We know the end of the story. But that doesn't mean we should not speak out and make a difference and then let God handle the results.
My work threatened to fire me 3 times for talking about Christ and stuff like this, and I still continue to go because I believe if I lose this job, he'll just find me a better one. And I do believe that. I just, it was an idea.
Sure. Well, Mason, tell you what, you take the information you've gained today, share it with everybody in your church. Share it with everybody in your church. Take a link to this program. It'll be on our website within a couple hours to inform others what's going on. Crosstalkamerica.com. Thanks for your call. Beth, you're next in West Allis. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Well, once again, I don't know why people are so surprised at this. This man, before he was elected the first time, said he's willing to kill his own grandchildren. He didn't want his daughters punished with a baby if there was a mistake. His history in Illinois and all the things that he laid out of what he wanted and what he voted for. So this is nothing new. We knew what we were getting, and I think the thing that really bothers me the most is that people that call themselves Christians not only voted for him the first time, but they voted for him the second time. I agree. We need to stand up. We need to occupy till he comes. We need to stand up for Christ's principles, and we need to, carry on and keep going on the big fight here. But I think there's need some moment of reflection, and people that did vote for this man, I think there's something to be said for repentance as well.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate your sharing that. Joe, you're next in Wisconsin. Go ahead. Hello, Joe. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi, how you doing?
Go ahead, Joe, with your comment. We're almost out of time.
Yeah, I just was going to wonder when you guys are going to stop with all of these silly issues. I mean, isn't history just sort of filled with examples of you guys being wrong?
Actually not, Joe. And history is his story, and that story is still going on. But no, it is not a silly issue. When we see life that's at stake here, Dr. Stevens, I think it mandates that we speak up.
We need to remember each one of us was once an embryo, and if somebody had taken our lives, we wouldn't be here today. When you take the life of even the smallest human beings, a person ceases to exist. And God has told us to protect the helpless and the weak, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. And it's something that all of us should do, no matter what our religious beliefs are.
And our final call from Sheboygan, and Eli, you're on the air.
Hi there. I am a licensed insurance agent. I do more life, but I also have a health insurance license, and I know that I think the only way we're going to save health care is to eliminate this conglomerate middleman called the insurance companies, because it's a very lucrative business as an agent to sell health insurance.
Okay, Dr. Stevens, we have about 30 seconds here. A quick comment on that.
Well, it is. We've got an enormous amount of bureaucracy, and there has to be a simpler way, and I would agree with that. What we've done, unfortunately, with Obamacare is increase the bureaucracy, 13,000 more pages. That's the problem. We cannot solve the problem with the bureaucracy. We need to eliminate bureaucracy and let market forces come into play, decrease the amount of care that's not really needed, but at the same time make sure we fund that is.
Sorry, I ran out of time here, Ellie, but thank you for making that point. Folks, very quickly here again, the website where you can have your comments heard, the Department of Health and Human Services taking comments until April 8th. Go to hhs.gov. Click on Regulations, then click on All HHS Rules open for comment. You'll find it there, hhs.gov. Click on Regulations, and then that'll be self-explanatory. Dr. David Stevens with us, cmda.org. Dr. Stevens, thanks for bringing this to our attention here at Crosstalk.
Great to be with you, Jim.
And folks, again, check out their site, cmda.org. You'll find a lot of helpful information on this and many, many other issues. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk, folks. Be praying about this, but don't just keep the information with yourself. Share it with somebody else. Get on board. Share a link with this program to others. Send it around your contact list as well. Appreciate you joining us today here on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.